All right, folks, welcome back to the Contrarians. We have a really cool special episode that one of our patrons suggested for a panel discussion, which is actually really exciting. We're going to be talking about the film This Is Spinal Tap. This is Spinal Tap, mockumentary film, came out in the 80s, comedy. We're going to discuss, is this the best rock slash documentary slash comedy film ever made, which is kind of a niche category there, but we're going to kind of iron things out and we're going to discuss it. I've got an incredible panel with me, four great folks who I'm interested in hearing their opinions on the film, some other great rock comedy documentary films, mockumentaries. We got Davy, Butch, Armando, and Rand. How's everybody doing tonight?
Great.
Doing good.
Swimmingly. How are you?
Sorry
Ready?
about the noise.
I'm ready to jive right in. So we're talking about This Is Spinal Tap. We're gonna have kind of a loose conversation. I'm just gonna introduce the film and I'm gonna talk about my experience with it, and then we'll just kind of go around, get everybody's experience, and then maybe we'll have a quick little powwow at the end. Welcome to the Contrarians. If you like to like and subscribe us, go ahead. A lot of these folks show up on a lot of channels and have their own channels, so please go out of your way to find their channels and like and subscribe them too. We all create free content and it just helps the community grow and build, and we all support each other, and it's awesome. We are talking about This Is Spinal Tap. This Is Spinal Tap came out in the 80s. 1984. It was directed by Rob Reiner with Christopher Guest, Michael McKean, and Harry Shearer as the three main members of the fictional rock band, This Is Spinal Tap. The film is a mockumentary, so it's not a real documentary, but it's shot as a documentary. It is a comedy, and it follows the band from the 60s to their subsequent tours and albums up until their present day of 1984, a tour, and how the band kind of falls apart and ends up getting back together. Spoiler alert, sorry. The band kind of goes through some adversity, and there's a lot of comedy hijinks along the way. My first experience with This Is Spinal Tap was from when I was a kid. I was like in grade 8, and this was one of the first DVDs I ever saw. We rented this along with The Legend of the Falls. Me and my mom both were sick. We were both
There's
really
a combo.
sick. That came out of nowhere, right? We rented 2 DVDs. It was one of the first. I think it was X-Men was the first DVD I ever saw, and this was like 2 or 3. Me and my mom were really sick one Christmas, and we stayed home for New Year's, and the rest of the family did their own thing because we were super sick. And we watched This Is Spinal Tap, which was my pick, and Legend of the Falls, which was my mom's pick. But we watched them together. And yeah. I was a fan of rock music. I was just getting into rock music. I was already into Kiss for several years, and I was just getting into AC/DC and Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and stuff like this. So this was right up my wheelhouse. I remember watching the film and just being enamored with it. Like a lot of the jokes when I saw it when I was in grade 8 went right over my head. There was a couple of things that legit made me laugh out loud as a kid. But it wasn't even the comedy for me. It was the fact that I was just getting into rock music and bands and the history of rock and this and that actually intrigued me about the film more than even the comedy at the time. Because to me, it's played pretty straight. So when you're a kid, some of that stuff just goes right over your head, especially if you're not super familiar with bands and rock bands and some of the history. So I was just getting into that stuff. But yeah, I love the film. Immediately went out to the same video store that we rented it from and rented the VHS tape of Return of Spinal Tap, which was a concert performance with some skits in between. And actually, I saw Davey go like this. As a kid, I've only seen it once when I was a kid, and I wasn't that impressed. I was expecting a sequel, and it was more of like a concert performance. And at the time, I just, I want to go back and watch it. But I kind of, as a kid, seemed to remember thinking about Spinal Tap as like a legit band, and at the time after watching the film, like I used to make mixed CDs of like AC/DC tunes and Black Sabbath and bands like that, and I would put Spinal Tap songs on those CDs, like Majesty of Rock, Stonehenge, Tonight I'm Gonna Rock You, like those. I listened to those songs at the time, not even realizing that they were novelty songs or that they were not, you know what I mean? But they were, in my opinion at the time, they sounded like rock songs, and as a kid I enjoyed them. Now I would listen to them. They're actually kind of funny if you listen to the lyrics, like Big Bottom Girls and stuff like this is hilarious. But I enjoyed the band for what they were musically. The film itself, I actually was very familiar with Kiss. I'd seen a lot of the Kiss home videos. Some of the stuff, you want to talk about like life imitating art. I remember watching Kiss Exposed, which came out after This Is Spinal Tap, but I saw that first. And when I was watching This Is Spinal Tap, I remember thinking like, are these guys goofing on Kiss? I don't think they were specifically goofing on Kiss. I think there was other bands they were actually goofing on, like the Stonehenge thing, I think was a Black Sabbath goof, or Deep Purple. There's Deep Purple Black Sabbath stuff, but like the scene in this Kiss Exposed where they're talking about singing old tunes on the street corners and stuff like this, that's a legit, like, I don't know if Kiss was trying to kind of goof on Spinal Tap, or they were trying to kind of be goofy, because that Kiss Exposed is pretty goofy. But if Kiss Exposed is legit, that's life imitating art, because they do that in This Is Spinal Tap. So my perspective of the film, I ended up buying it on DVD. I still own it on DVD, but I think it's at my parents' house. The DVD is fantastic, by the way. Rand's got it in the background. That was one of the first DVDs. The X-Men one was another one, but like the logo comes in and like you hear the band members and like, no, it's getting too small and blah blah blah. I just remember loving the DVD, going through all the extras, watching the like fake commercials and all the behind the scenes stuff, and it was a great DVD experience. Which I think as DVDs went along, they kind of started not putting as much effort into the menus and all of that stuff as they did early on. Like you watch that first X-Men DVD and the This Is Spinal Tap DVD, there's a lot of stuff going on with the menus, which is really cool. But in terms of the film itself, yeah, it's just today I can watch it and laugh, and I love it. There's a lot of great laughs in it. It's super quotable. There's lots of quotes. When I compare it to other, first of all, when I think of mockumentaries, I can't think of a ton of music mockumentaries. Like there's maybe like a few that I can think of off the top of my head. And there's a couple of really bad ones. You can find, there's a really bad one. I'm not going to name it. It's on Tubi TV because I don't want to put anybody's work down, but there's a really bad music mockumentary on Tubi TV that is like unwatchable. This movie is far from unwatchable. This is very entertaining, very watchable. And I think one member of the cast who maybe doesn't get enough credit is Rob Reiner, who I think he's the straight man to this entire goofy music world. His delivery on some of the lines, his journalistic integrity, like his just straight man and like whatever attitude towards all of the stuff that's going on around him, and him asking certain questions at certain times, is he has an incredible performance in this film. I'm assuming that they went on to do Best in Show and Mighty Wind, and there's some other movies that the same kind of company of actors and filmmakers kind of went on to do. And I'm assuming that the film kind of followed in that this was maybe the template for those later films, and that maybe a lot of this was improvised. I'm not 100% sure. I know some of these folks on the panel are going to give us some expert information and stuff like this. Is this the best rock documentary, mockumentary, comedy film? That's a very niche category. And honestly, I would probably put it right up at 1 or 2. I mean, like, but the list is not very long for rock mockumentaries or even rock documentary comedies. So, I mean, like, I can only think of a handful off the top of my head. And yeah, I think this stands up as the template. It's a cornerstone, and it's a bar to reach for sure. If you're going to set out to make a mockumentary or a rock comedy documentary, this is probably the bar that you're going to aim for. I think it holds up today, especially now that I've lived, 15 to 20 plus years since then, getting into all of these bands that influenced this movie. It makes me appreciate this film even more. I think this is a great movie. I love music movies. There's a few of them out there. I mentioned a couple of them before we started recording. I mean, there's Almost Famous, and what was that other one I mentioned with Tom Hanks with the fake band? They put out the singer
doing that thing you
do.
Yeah, that thing.
Yeah. Those are kind of, there's comedy in those, but those are about like fictional bands as well. But this one is more of like a documentary style, and I think it works as a documentary and as a comedy. Mockumentary and a comedy. So that's kind of like my experience with it. It's a great film. Looking forward to seeing what these other folks have to say. So why don't we let's go with Rand first. Why don't you let us know what you think of the film, and is it the best rock documentary, mockumentary music film out there?
Well, I love it. I watched it today, and I was watching the commentaries until I had to take my pets for a walk, and then I had to do this. But I know what I saw the first time in 1984 in San Francisco at a theater when I was visiting down there, and it was a double bill with Black and Blue with Blue Oyster Cult and Black Sabbath. And to this day, I haven't seen that since. But it was a great night, and Spinal Tap played last, of course. And this movie was absolutely hilarious. I was in stitches. I've seen it with musicians that have had record contracts and stuff, and they said that this is, in a way, sad. He was crying. He said, because this is true. This is how it is. He goes, this isn't just a big joke. And Steven Tyler absolutely got depressed watching it. He cried too. He said, it's so true. And as far as anybody's band, that everybody thinks it's about them. All the bands think it's about them, which kind of backs up what I just said. But Yes thought it was about them. You're right. He thought it was about them. I don't know about Kiss because I don't know anything about Kiss. But I see this movie as to rock and roll or heavy metal what Airplane was for flying in airports. The movie Airport. I think that's why Airplane was made. And Airplane was so funny in 1980, but today I'm not laughing because I already know the jokes. I know what's coming. So I kind of felt that today while watching it, although I hadn't seen it in a couple of years. The commentary, on the other hand, is priceless. And you really do go into stitches with some of the things they say. I think in a way the commentary is better than the actual dialogue of the movie. And there's some bonus features with that limo driver that are, I mean, good Lord, you'll fall on the floor. You won't be able to breathe. It's so funny with Bruno Kirby. I don't want to spoil it, but just say if you're in the market of getting a DVD, it's different than watching it just on, like streaming or cable, because they won't show you the bonus features, and they're absolutely great. But yeah, I think, as far as what you would call the rating this thing, I would think it's the best, number one. And the only other one I could think of was the Ruddles with Eric Idle and some of the Monty Python guys and Neil Innes from Bonzo Dog Doodah Band. That's pretty funny if you're into the Beatles, but there's a lot of inside jokes that you got to know by being a Beatle freak to understand it. This, you didn't need to know anything. It was able to present itself to anyone in 1984, and anybody could get this. Anybody could like this if they could tolerate rock and roll or heavy rock. Yeah, they could get this. I mean, there's some songs that just really, like, say, that Rock and Roll Creation One song, for instance. I think that sounds more like Uriah Heep. And Big Bottoms is really hilarious because I was with it's a drummer friend of mine at the time, and he goes, "Oh my God, they're all playing bass." It's just like nobody does this. Or 3 bass players and the bass synthesizer, and the jokes just keep coming. I mean, if you've never seen it, you got to prepare. You just got to have a lot of tolerance for not being able to breathe, because you're going to be busting what they call busting a gut. Yeah, I think this is number one.
Awesome, thank you, Rand. You just made me think of a question I'm going to ask everybody once we all go around once. So I'm going to ask everybody the same question, but I'm going to throw it over to Butch next. Butch, what did you think of the film? Is it the best rock mockumentary comedy ever?
Man, I love this movie. I first saw this in the 80s. Probably in the later 80s I saw it, but interestingly, my first experience with Spinal Tap was in the early days of MTV. Around the time the movie, I guess they would have been preparing to bring the movie out. They did like little promos that at the time I didn't realize what I was watching was fake, because there was this little promo about an album called Intravenous de Milo and how it had like been shipped so many copies and been returned like twice, shipped 1 million and 2 million returned or something like that. It was along those lines. And I remember thinking, I didn't realize this was I didn't realize I was seeing Lenny from Laverne and Shirley, Michael McKean, and I didn't know who Christopher Guest was at the time. So I, eventually, like, obviously I caught on pretty quickly once the movie actually came out, but I didn't get to see it until it came out on VHS, and it came out like at a time when I was still, the 80s were obviously, for me, I'm 52, so this was like my wheelhouse when I was really getting into metal, and music still is everything to me, but at the time, I mean, those were the formative years. So a lot of the and I, my buddies and I all love comedy anyway, so I agree with Rand. I think anyone can watch this movie. It's hilarious. Anyway, I do find, though, that if you understand the reference points that, or if you've experienced this in a band as well, which, haven't played in bands, like, it makes it like even funnier on some levels, although it also makes it it can be kind of sad, because you see some of it and you're like, yeah, that, that it wasn't funny when it happened, but it's funny to see it. But some of the references in the movie, the Stonehenge especially is a reference to Sabbath on the Born Again tour. They went out on the road with they wanted a huge Stonehenge set, and they gave the dimensions got screwed up, and they had the Stonehenge rocks that were like too big for them to even fit in most arenas, so they didn't even barely use it. There's like little stuff like that, or they had like I guess the first the first night they had a dwarf dressed up as the baby from the album cover, and they like fell off one of the one of the Stonehenge monuments. And I mean, it's just like ridiculous, some of the references. The bit with the pods is a pretty if this is, and they go deep with some of these references, like the bit with the pods is based on a band called Angel from the 70s, who used to come out of these glass boxes on stage. And I remember talking to Frank Domino. I had an Angel fanzine at one time, and he did say that he remembered at least one time where Greg Giuffria got stuck inside one of those. So like, all these things are hilarious. There's from what they're wearing, lampooning like bands like Saxon, and I mean, you just spot like little stuff here and there. They hit like almost every band through the types of music that they're playing, going back to how what kind of music they played at the beginning, going from like just the two of them playing their guitars together, like as a reference point for like skiffle, and then going through their psychedelic phase. You could see the reference to Status Quo there, before turning into like a hard rock kind of band. Yeah, I mean, the movie's hilarious. And then one of the funniest things about it too is that there's only supposedly there's only 2 lines in that movie that were written. One of them is when the roadie introduces the band, when he says live from direct from hell, Spinal Tap. And then when Sir Dennis Eaton Hogg is at the party and he says, "So say we all tap into America." Like, everything else is improvised, so it's like brilliant. And it's one of the things that's really funny too, like, and just I didn't pick up on until recent events, is that when Jeff Beck passed, someone had mentioned online about how in Spinal Tap that Nigel Tufnell's character was based on Jeff Beck. And I went and watched some Jeff Beck interviews, and I was like, why? It's really like, Christopher Guest really took Beck's personality and like did the voice and everything to do, I don't think Jeff Beck was a stupid person like the way Nigel comes across, but the voice and the mannerisms it's striking to me. But yeah, I mean, we watched this movie like so many times. I introduced my daughter to it. She doesn't even like heavy metal, and She loves the movie. It's a great film. There's not, like Marco was saying, it's super quotable. I still use these quotes. There's quotes we use all the time. Like I use them on bands all the time. We could be backstage somewhere, we're walking towards the stage, and I'm yelling "Hello Cleveland." It doesn't matter where we are. It's always like "Hello Cleveland," and there's too much fucking perspective, and we're gonna play the Stonehenge number this evening. I mean, I had a band called Druid in high school. We used the intro from the Stonehenge song. We cut it off partway through, but I mean, there's just so much with this film that is like been a part of my life for years. I should watch that. I haven't watched with the commentary yet, which I really should do. I have 2 copies of the damn DVD. So I have to do that. I mean, I love the film though. For me, it's not, it's definitely the best mockumentary that I've seen overall. And also one of my top 3 to 5 comedies, period, ever. There are some other fairly funny fake rock band mockumentary kind of things. There's one with Rick Mayall and Adrian Edmondson and Nigel Planer from the Young Ones called Bad News Tour. That's actually really, really funny. And there's a lot of debate among metalheads about which, I've seen a lot of people like Bad News Tour more. I think it's hilarious. I mean, there's that again, that's another one that my buddies and I used to quote all the time. That one's definitely worth looking into. If you love Spinal Tap, like definitely check that one out. There was a film that Bill Nighy was in and Billy Connolly called Still Crazy.
Yes.
About an aging, rock band. That was pretty entertaining too. I enjoyed that. I saw the Ruddles once. I enjoyed that. But other than some of Christopher Guest's other mockumentary type films, like I didn't care as much for A Mighty Wind as obviously as like Spinal Tap or even like Best in Show or Waiting for Guffman. But that's a funny movie too. That's music related. It's just, and over the years too, like when Spinal Tap put out their they put out that album in the early 90s. Was it Break Like the Wind? They put out the Break Like the Wind record. Like I think some of that was funny. Some of the titles were funnier than the music, but I also like used to put some of their songs on comps. Like I love the Stonehenge song, and I loved they have a song called America that's barely in the film, but I like that one. Hellhole was always fun. Big Bottom's fun for obvious reasons. I mean, just the songs are quotable. Sex Farm. And then some of the stuff off Break Like the Wind was funny. The Sun Never Sweats. I always like that title. Break Like the Wind, of course, is a great title. Bitch School was like them trying a little bit too hard, I thought. But unfortunately, I missed them too on that tour. I really would have liked to have seen them play that live. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a great movie. I mean, it's an easy 10 out of 10 for me. There's so many scenes. I mean, you get me started on that movie with my friends. I mean, like I said, there's just so much to quote from it. I mean, we'd like to stay and hang out, but we got to go sit in the lobby and wait for the limo. And I mean, it's just, and I'll mangle them, but everyone knows what you're talking about. And you just throw these things out there. I mean, there's just so much of their, you didn't do it in Doubly and smell the, smell. We use the scene where their manager comes strolling in with a box of records, and he's like, smell the glove. So it's like anytime I've been in a band and we get our box of albums, we're always like yelling, smell the glove. And yeah, God, I don't want to. I'm not going to take up any more time, but needless to say, I love the film. There's so much there's so much in it. I mean, you could watch it 5 times and catch new things every time from because there's so much going on in the scenes, like the limo scene and Artie, all these characters, Artie Fufkin and Billy Crystal's in it, doing the mime, and Fran Drescher's hilarious in it, and it's just hilarious all the way through. And there's so much to gain from it. And again, like if you understand like some of the reference points, it makes it even deeper watch. And then being in a band, I mean, sometimes you do want to cry watching it, but mostly you just want to laugh because a lot of that stuff just does happen, and there's a reason it's in that movie. But brilliant film, love it.
Can I add something real quick, Butch? Since you brought up the young ones,
yeah,
you brought up the young ones, right? Have you ever heard a record called Neil's Heavy Concept Album?
I heard of it, but I've never heard it.
I own it.
Davey, is that something you've heard?
Awesome. It's awesome. Yeah, it's great. It's really psychedelic. It's nuts. You got to hear it. It's great.
I didn't realize the young ones had made it to the US in quite a big way.
Nigel Planer. Yeah, we used to watch it on MTV.
Yeah.
Well, it was on MTV. That's quite something.
I have like a DVD box set downstairs that has all the episodes from it. Yeah, MTV used to play it, and so that's how I found out about those. You know, I always thought that was great. Like when they, you know, having like, you know, they always had like in some rock band on there too, like Motorhead being on it, and it was cool. Adrian, you know, Vivian's character was a you know, the very metal on the back, and it was like cross between a punk guy and a metalhead. So,
and that's funny because a lot of those references would be ones that you'd kind of need to be UK based. Like their Cliff Richard thing, the ongoing Cliff Richard jokes are very UK centric.
Oh, there was a lot I didn't understand.
Yeah. But hey.
All right, thank you, Butch. That was awesome. Yeah, it's funny. I think the most recent time I watched it, I think I laughed more than I did 10, 15 years ago.
Same. I laugh as harder now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Butch. And you're never taking up any time on here, so don't worry about that. Why don't we throw it over to Armando next? Armando, what did you think of Spinal Tap? Is it the best documentary, mockumentary comedy of all time?
Well, my history with it was, you know, I saw the music videos for Hellhole, and I did see the commercials for it when I was like 14. And I mean, in Toronto, there was a music station before Much Music came on the air in Toronto in '84. There was a music show called City Limits that was on Channel 7 City TV in Toronto, and it went literally from midnight to 6 a.m. and they would do repeats of these 6-hour shows on you know during the day or during the evening, like prime time, and they would show these videos, you know, for Hellhole and not Big Bottom. I would have remembered that, but I mean, when I saw this, stop it, Davey. When I saw this, I actually, for the life of me, I thought it was a bloody real band. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, I couldn't make heads or tails of it. And then when I realized Michael McKean, like, you know, bloody Lenny from Laverne and Shirley's, and I'm like, okay, this is a joke. This is, you know, this is not real. This is made up, right? This is like supposed to be fun. But I mean, I like the movie. I think they take all, and I don't mean, when I use the word cliche, I don't mean it disrespectfully, but they do take all the rock and roll, quote unquote, cliches and turn it up about 2 or 3 notches. You know what I mean? Like, you can tell they're sort of taking the piss out of everything that happens in the rock and roll lifestyle. It's a funny movie. It's a who's who that was starting to come up in the 80s in terms of, like, you know, Billy Crystal and Dana Carvey, people like that. I mean, to see Fran Drescher as the A&R person for the record company, and, you know, and she's not using that nasally voice that she did for when she was on The Nanny kind of thing. Like, it's fun. It's fun. I mean, they're not taking themselves. I mean, yes, they're doing it straight. They're playing it straight, every character, but you can tell they're not taking it too seriously. I mean, when they play Big Bottom and they're all playing basses, I mean, like right then and there, it's a joke, right? It's not serious, right? Although they're playing it that way, and having an exploding drummer. I'm sorry, that was just not that. I screamed. I was laughing so hard when I saw that. But I think it's a good movie. I think even the people like the supporting cast, like Bruno Kirby playing the limo driver. It's like, oh, these kids don't understand, like Frank Sinatra, he knew where it was at, he really lived the lifestyle, and then but this rock music, it's just a fad. It's like, okay. Like all right. And I think Rob Reiner as the straight man through the whole thing, I think he did a fantastic job. I think it's a good movie. I would love to see the gag reel of this. I mean, and again, they also put in, the girlfriend of, one of the band members that, is slowly usurping everyone's territory and sneaking her way into the band, controlling the band, and you see every time they try and get themselves booked into a venue or just get the momentum going for this, comeback album, they just get shot down over and over again. And the venues are getting smaller and smaller and smaller as they go along, right? So I mean, it's just it's hilarious, that no matter where they're playing, they could be playing in a barn, for two cows that are watching them play. They're taking it seriously. They're like, you know what, we're here, we're professionals, we're going to do this gig, you know what, and let's just rock out. And they're on the stage like this small, and they're doing the best that they can. And they know they're screwing up. They know they know that they can't go any lower, and they keep going. So I mean, if that's not rock and roll, I don't know what the hell is, really, the spirit of it, right? So do I think this is the funniest rockumentary or mockumentary? I'd have to say yes. When the three of them are in character, they don't break for anybody. Like even when they were doing interviews for the movie, or even when they were doing the Freddie Mercury tribute concert back in 92, and they were doing the interviews for the local media, like for Much Music in Toronto, they were in full character. They didn't break. They didn't do nothing, out of character. So in that respect, they were consummate professionals, right? And then to read that, when I did my research on it, that they're listed as musicians, the actual musicians on the albums, that and I think it's just amazing, that they did that. So yeah, I think it's a fantastic film. I would love to see the gag reel on this and just sit there and laugh my ass off, which I did when I watched it. So yeah, I think it's a fantastic film in that respect. So
very cool. Thank you, Armando, knocking it out of the park once again. And last, certainly not least, we're going to throw it over to Davy. Why don't you take us home, Davy? Let us know what you thought of the film.
Thank you, Willow. Catch it if you're throwing it over after it was knocked out of the park. There's another terrible sporting metaphor you seem to have carried on there. It's a little like. But there is indeed a fine line between stupid and clever. So we'll go on. The first time I saw this was probably the early 2000s. And I wouldn't be surprised, Marco, if it was the same DVD. Probably about the same time. Not the exact same DVD.
You rented it from the same video store?
No, I mean, I remember stealing a few things from your house back in the day, but, although, frankly, I don't know why you think you're qualified to talk about documentary music filmmaking, Marco. This is it's nothing to do with you, is it? The Story of Mystique, folks, available now. Come on, plug it. Come on.
Plug it, Marco, plug it.
Yeah.
You're the man.
Yes. Yeah. So I've seen Spinal Tap live in the 2000s, and that was an experience because not only was it, we're finally getting to see Spinal Tap. It was about the time of, I think the profits were for, what was the follow-up to Live Aid? Was it just Live 8? Because it was for
Live 8.
Yeah. The one Pink Floyd reunited for. It was about that
Live
time.
8. Yeah.
So the profits, hey, I don't think they'll be reuniting again anytime soon there.
No.
But that's for another video. Would you like to know who the opening band were for Spinal Tap? They were booed off. It was the Folksmen, played by the same three guys from A Mighty Wind. So they opened up for themselves as the Folksmen. That was genius. And there they are doing folk versions of like Start Me Up by the Stones with You'd Make a Dead Man Come, you make it, absolute genius. Fantastic. And half the audience that were only there because they remember liking the movie had no idea who these people were. There was no big screen with close-ups and things, and they booed them off the stage, which was the perfect reaction. It's exactly what they're going for. Because, and I know this isn't what you meant, Armando, but you said you realised these weren't real musicians and it was a joke. They ended up becoming almost Pinocchio-like a real band who release albums as regularly, as regular. In fact, they have released more regularly than some real bands, quote unquote.
Yeah. No, I know.
And it's as legit a way to make music as any other because they are playing it and they wrote and recorded it themselves. So why not? Paul McCartney's real name isn't even Paul McCartney, lest we forget it's James. It's all an illusion in the world of rock and roll, really. The film itself is very hard to review comedy. I don't tend to do it on my own channel very much because the danger is you end up just doing the jokes. And it's never as funny to just repeat the joke as it when you can just watch the actual movie. The Blu-ray box does it itself. I mean, this is the None More Black Blu-ray edition, where you get the full quote in the back, and then the disc itself is goes all the way up to 11. This disc goes all the way up to 11. When the BBC did their streaming service, the iPlayer, which is wonderful, free as well. Take note, other stream services. They decided, as an homage, just the guy that designed it, the volume on it goes all the way up to 11 for no other reason than the guy likes Spinal Tap. So to this day, if you're watching EastEnders or The Funeral of the Queen, you can go all the way up to 11. It doesn't matter what you're watching. So that's how deeply it's permeated kind of pop culture in these odd little ways, which you can find all over the place. Again, to go into the film itself is kind of pointless because people will know roughly from what everyone said and just osmosis what's going on. It's the story of this semi famous band who could go up to their previous heights or could go down, and it's like conglomeration of a million different bands. As was mentioned, every band seems to think it's about them, which probably tells the cast and crew that they were doing a bloody good job if everybody thought it was about them. So it's not a parody of one individual act. Although Marta de Berge is clearly a parody of Martin Scorsese in The Last Waltz. He's doing the interviewing exactly like Martin Scorsese, and he's called Marty. So that's no, and he's Italian, so there's no coincidence there. Rand mentioned the commentary is hilarious. What he didn't mention, I appreciate it's just taking it as read because Rand's obviously listened to it. they don't just do it as the actors, they do it as Spinal Tap. So you're not listening to Christopher Guest talk, and you're listening to, you know, etc., etc. Exactly the same as the opening menu, where it's the band themselves talking about what does scene selection do? Can I watch something from another movie? Does it have to be from, I've already seen this? You know, all that kind of stuff, which is just terrific. One of my favorite scenes, I said I don't want to go into the, you know, the stuff that's been done a million times before in the actual movie, but I think if I had to pick a deleted scene to kind of worm one thing into mention from the movie that I think is as funny as any in the actual movie, and I don't know who's seen the deleted scenes here, but there's one where they go to the zoo, and it might be my favorite thing in the whole movie, even though it's not in the actual movie. They go to the zoo and they're looking at gorillas, and they see this big gorilla, and they're just talking to each other about how wonderful gorillas are, and they go, yeah, you know, they're terrific, aren't they? And you can see them kind of, probably the reason why it was dropped, there's a few too many silences as they're coming up with material in their heads, and they go, yeah, you know, they're terrific species, bread eaters, they love bread, and yet they've developed almost no baking skills as a species. Absolutely none. And go, yeah, as a race, you think they would have come up with that? Well, they're not a race; they're a genus. Well, I don't think they're a genus. I mean, some of them might be smarter than others. I mean, so it follows on. Like they're all picking up on each other's banter. Butch mentioned Stonehenge. The funny thing about Stonehenge, obviously, is the prop itself being a reverse of the true story, but then they riff on it further. So when Ian, the band's manager, says, for example, let's not make a big deal out of this, Harry Shearer says, I rather think we should have made a big deal about this. It would have worked out better because it came back that fucking size. So it's not always just about the big set scene. It's about these little moments that kind of show that these guys are from an improv background par excellence, or excellence if you happen to be in France, and if you are, apologies. But the same guys, as mentioned, would go on, minus Rob Reiner, who would go on to a fantastically successful film directing career himself. After this, they would go on to like Misery and A Few Good Men and North. But you know, he'd still pop up in Wolf of Wall Street as an actor, for example. He was Jonah Hill's dad. He had a great role in that. So you know, Rob Reiner's still out there. They have kept working together, the three guys, not just the Spinal Tap as shown there. They are the Folksmen in A Mighty Wind, which essentially adds them to the SCTV cast, which I always thought was a lot funnier than Saturday Night Live. The wonderful SCTV with obviously back in the day it was John Candy and like, but you get Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara, and they're just wonderful in this, and as Butch mentioned as well, Best in Show, which isn't music, that's a dog show, kind of one of these awful dog shows that they have. But even that show, you know, as if we would watch something about a dog show, but they can make that into one of the funniest movies of the 1990s. Just shows that how comically wonderful they are. This is fantastic though, A Mighty Wind for kind of music. If you want to follow on a different genre of music, Eugene Levy is hilarious as the kind of burnt out old hippie. And Rand mentioned the Ruttles. I cannot recommend the Ruttles highly enough. This is one of the clear predecessors of Spinal Tap. For me, I don't think you really have Spinal Tap if you don't start off with something like the Ruttles, which was called All You Need Is Cash, if people remember. So the Ruttles, All You Need Is Cash. And that came from Eric Idle's TV show, Rutland Weekend Television. And George Harrison and him were great friends, which is how George Harrison ends up being in the film, playing an elderly gentleman, which is quite fun to see. And it's just, as Rand said, it's full of references to the Beatles. But the Beatles are so ubiquitous in pop culture, I don't really think you need to know too much about them to get to enjoy this, because everybody knows the cover of Abbey Road and Let It Be, and that's the kind of references you'll get here. So you don't need to know the real intricacies. Yeah, if you know who Stuart Sutcliffe is, you're going to get a few more jokes, that kind of thing. But by God, this is Eric Idle's introduction. The prefab four created a legend that will last a lunchtime. I mean, fantastic. And this has got. Remember the DJ back in the prehistoric days, Murray the K, who was responsible for being one of the guys who launched Beatlemania in America and built up the hype before they did Ed Sullivan. Bill Murray plays him, and he's called Bill Murray the K, which is just genius. Just genius. And then their manager in it, who's a direct parody of Alan Klein, as we know, one of the biggest. Well, I don't like to use terribly bad language on this channel, but you insert your word here. One of the biggest in music. He ripped off the Beatles. Yeah, let's just go with Dowerbag and insert, the CHE where you will. But John Belushi basically plays him, and he plays him hysterically funny. John Belushi's hysterical. Dan Aykroyd's in it. So, I mean, it's full of these wonderful, famous faces popping up just for a scene or two. To give you an idea of the humour of it, I mean, it's very Python-esque, obviously, very Bonzo Dog Doodah band, but it's Ricky Fataar is one of the bands, so it's wonderfully musical as well. They sound exactly like the Beatles. There are parts in here where you would think you were listening to the Beatles. It's quite phenomenal. And an idea of the sense of humour. They're talking about the Shea Stadium concert by the Beatles, well, the Ruttles. And he says, I'm standing here at Shea Stadium, named after the Cuban guerrilla fighter Shea Stadium. And and then when it shows you the name of Shea Stadium, it's actually spelled like Che Guevara as well. So, I mean, it's just all these little things that just add up to be. And again, this, like Spinal Tap, has a belated sequel, which is included on this Blu-ray called Can't Buy Me a Lunch. And unfortunately, Spinal Tap, you can't go home again because it ain't anywhere near as good. One that people will not know, I don't think, outside the UK, but I guarantee you that any prog fan, Rand, Armando, but trust me, you will love this if you ever have the chance to see it. It's Brian Pern, right? And this, if you can't tell from that, is a direct parody of Peter Gabriel.
I got it.
Right?
Yeah.
It is a direct parody of, and I don't just mean a little bit. Brian Pern even talks like Peter Gabriel. You know that weird cadence he's got, where it's like every syllable was like enunciated. It's a very staticato voice that Peter Gabriel has.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Very.
Does anybody remember the viral video from YouTube with the Australian guy who's getting arrested while he's eating his lunch? A meal, a succulent Chinese meal. Has anybody seen that video? It went viral about 10 years ago. First of all, I'll need to put that in the comments. This guy was arrested while eating his lunch, and they thought he was this is a true story, an international drug smuggler. Turns out it was just this random Australian guy who was arrested wrongly, but the news had been tipped off, and they were recording, expecting the arrest of this drug kingpin. The guy they arrest, though, happens to be the most entertaining guy that you accidentally arrest ever. He's gone, "What are you arresting me for, sir? Eating a meal, a succulent Chinese meal. Get your hand off my penis. Get your hand." And then the cop tries to put him in a headlock to get him into the car. And this is all real. Put him in the car, and he's gone, "I see you know your judo well, sir." It's fantastic, and he keeps going on about the other cop is in front of him. "Are you waiting to receive my limp penis, sir?" It's just this guy's just. First of all, that needs to be seen, right? But that is in this, right? That is in this. So this is about the time where that video had gone viral, and Simon Day, the character you see there,
I've never heard of that.
As Brian Pern, right? He sees this video and makes a protest song about people being falsely arrested at lunchtimes. And it is done to the exact tune of Biko. So he gets so angry that this poor Australian guy was arrested falsely in a Chinese restaurant. That he does this. I mean, Steve Biko's story is, you know, terrifically inspiring and tragic, and you know, and then he turns it into an Australian getting arrested at lunchtime, talking about his limp penis. But he talks about it as if he is talking about Biko. That's the genius of this. And it's full of things like Rick Wakeman's in it. And all he does is keep pointing out, I played piano on that. Like, that's all he does, is he pops up and goes, I played piano on that. So they talk about Starman by Bowie. I played piano on that. They show Armando, for you. Roger Taylor's in it. And every time he comes up, it says Roger Taylor. And then instead of saying Queen, it says Duran Duran underneath his name.
Okay. I gotta see
Taylors.
This thing. Okay.
Yeah, I gotta see it too. I didn't even know it existed. When did it come out, Davey?
The 2010, so about 2015, I think.
The cover looks familiar to me. That's all I'm gonna say.
So he doesn't just do a little bit of Gabriel, right? It does all through Gabriel's life, right? So it goes from early Genesis, and as you can tell there, I mean, complete with talking about the fox outfit and things. Well, the fox was done, so I thought we better try and one up that. So I had to get a panda outfit. Unfortunately, we couldn't find one, so we just went to the zoo and killed one at London Zoo. Don't tell them. I realizes what he said. So he's wearing an actual panda. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's nonsensical. And then at the end of each series of it, in fact, even Phil Collins is good in it. He pops up in it. And Phil Collins is interviewed about Brian Pern. And while he's talking, he keeps doing this and lifting his own autobiography up to try and, you know. So Phil Collins is selling his autobiography while paying tribute to Brian Pern. It's genius. And at the end of every series, there's 3 series and a few specials. It ends with, the words Peter and Gabriel were never mentioned, but it ends with every year, Peter Gabriel coming into it and trying to kill Brian Pern. Right? Have you seen The Long Good Friday with Bob Hoskins?
Yeah.
If you remember, it ends with Harold Shah, Bob Hoskins, being taken away to, spoiler alert, to his death, because he's just tried to make a deal that's too big for him. And the last shot of the movie is a gun being held to him while he sits in the back of the car. In series 2, it ends with Brian Pern getting into his limousine, and Peter Gabriel turns around from the front seat with a gun and points at him. It's exactly the end of The Long Good Friday. It's just genius. So when it was mentioned that, there's not really many out there that you can, compare Spinal Tap to, if you dig into the world of television, there's actually a lot more. And Brian Pern would be my number 1 recommendation, because it rips the piss out of prog so fantastically.
I gotta get
so
that.
Fantastically.
And
again, it's done totally with affection, because you've got all sorts of musicians from the period pop up. And when Roger Taylor popped up and said Roger Taylor, Duran Duran, I just lost my shit. It's just genius, absolute genius.
Hey, Davey, did you ever hear that little joke about God's lost triplets that don't know their brothers?
No.
Bob Hoskins, Phil Collins, and Danny DeVito.
Crazy. Not one of the best jokes I've heard.
They look alike. They all look alike, though.
To a degree.
It's more of a commentary than a joke, but there you go. And a bit unfair to Bob Hoskins. Do you know he was once voted the world's sexiest man? I can only imagine his wife was the only person polled in that. Dumpy, small British hairy guy. So a word for this, because although we're celebrating Spinal Tap, come on, it doesn't need to be sold, does it? Everybody in the granny either knows about it or has seen it already. So just an expansion on it. Just try some of these, because I guarantee you, and especially on the Contrarians, where we do have a prog element, people will love Brian Pern. I promise you, I absolutely guarantee it. I mean, he makes an album with he was the first person to use world music, he says, and he makes an album with a gorilla, and the gorilla plays the plays keyboard parts. It's just fantastic.
Oh, I gotta get this. I'm gonna look
Yeah,
this up.
keep a straight face. It's hard.
Series 2 is based on Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds. He does a musical version of Day of the Triffids.
Oh my God.
It is, yeah. So honestly, it probably just turned this into an advert for Brian Pern now, but it's a genius television show and fantastic. Watch a little bit on YouTube if you need to get the bug, and don't sleep on the "Get your hand off my penis" that video, because that's genius too, and that's a real one. But back to Spinal Tap to conclude. Is it the best? Is it the best? Well, actually, it's definitely the most quotable. And it's definitely the most fun when you're a rock fan to kind of riff over with your friends. And it's so stacked with extras that you almost don't need a sequel, because there's so many deleted scenes and things, you almost get a sequel with it. But actually, I think I prefer both of these. I think I prefer the Russells and Brian Pern in terms of laughs per minute. And it's a bit unfair because, as mentioned, we've all seen this so many times that, you know, sometimes it can be a little bit, you know, like, oh, I know what's coming now. But hey, that can also help, because you're waiting for the joke that you know is coming. So saying that I prefer one of these over the others, like, you know, what's your favorite ice cream? You know, it's really not a diss on Spinal Tap to say I slightly prefer the Russells, because, you know, I'd give them both 10 out of 10s for what they are. So this has been a party political broadcast by the Brian Pern for Prime Minister Party today. But yes, so my strongest recommendation, strong politics, don't start me, Armando, don't start me, young man.
I'd rather you swear.
I think we'll let the silence speak for itself there. Okay. Justin Trudeau down there, just because you're Canadian. Bless you. So yeah, all four of these: Mighty Wind, Russell, Spinal Tap, Brian Pern. This is where to start your mockumentary collection when it comes to music. Throw in things like Dewey Cox, you know, the Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story with John C. Reilly, and just keep going from there. Just look for recommendations, films like these, and you will not go too far wrong. And the reason I spent so much time in this is because, first of all, it deserves it. It's no audience outside the UK whatsoever, and I think that for people on the Contrarians, there will be so much here that they will enjoy. And you know, yeah, that's true of this too, but they've probably already seen this, so not too much point in mitigating that. So I've talked for long enough, but that's never stopped me before, so I might keep going for another 10 minutes. So Marco, you better stop me.
I'm going to get you to talk a little bit more, actually, because I'm going to go back around and I'm going to ask everybody. You kind of mentioned this, but you said it as a deleted scene. But I want to ask everybody, what's your favorite scene from the film? So excluding deleted scenes. So let's go backwards. So Davy, what's your favorite scene or quote from This Is Spinal Tap?
It probably is, because as much as I love wordplay, when they are going through the arena and just never able to find their way on stage, that's almost a wonderful example of near silent comedy, because they never admit to themselves that they're not finding it. They always seem excited, like, yeah, this is definitely the right way, and they're all, yeah. And it never is. Just that tickles my funny bone every time. But yeah, so I'd say that, or just the montage of the past with the, you know, the drummers, and seeing the footage of you know, the Stones parody when they were the more beat combo like, and then as Butch mentioned, the Status Quo Matchstick Men era version thing. So yeah. To be honest, I don't think there's a bad scene in Spinal Tap. I don't think anybody here could give a wrong answer to that question.
Great, thank you, Davey. Cinema flicks and music picks.
Yeah, see, there's cinema in there, so I know about movies. You know, I've seen 5 movies.
Armando, favorite scene or quote?
How could I follow Davey? But I will, actually.
That's fine. The private detectives do.
Well, it's a tie. The one scene for me is the scene with Rob Reiner where he's talking about the amps going up to 11. Right. That's the one scene. And the big bottom sequence. I'm sorry, it's just, they're all playing bass, they're all shaking their asses into the camera. It's like, it's all parody. And again, they're just taking it up a couple of notches, right? They're trying to be serious about it, but it's not. So those are the two scenes for me.
Thank you. Butch, favorite quote or scene?
Geez, I mean, I love so many of the quotes and scenes from it. It'd be hard to pick one, but I will say that the first time I watched it, I think the one that gave me the biggest laugh, and this is the immature Butch and me, is Marty DeBurghe's he's at Nigel Tufnell's place, and Nigel's playing piano, and he's playing that really soft, delicate piece, and he's like, they're talking about it, and DeBurghe's like, it's a big departure for you, and he's, Tufnell's like, this is my Mach, part Bach, part Mozart, and DeBurghe's like, well, what's this called? And Nigel's just like, well, I call this one Lick My Love Pump. Just like he plays this beautiful piece of music, and then it's called Lick My Love Pump. And like I said, it just stuck with me because the freaking 14, 15-year-old in me thought that was so funny. But I love some of the quotes from that. I mean, I use them all the time, like, what's wrong with being sexy? And smell the glove. I use a lot of these. I use these in my everyday life, and people look at me, if they don't know the movie, like they look at me like I'm crazy. But I mean, it is so quotable.
Sorry, Butch, I should say I forgot one of my definitely favorites would be the meaning of the name Saint Hubbins, as being a not very well known saint. And it turns out he's the patron saint of quality footwear.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
I just to add in quickly, for me, that scene with Nigel at the piano when he's playing this lovely, piano piece, and he's like, it's called Lick My Love Pump. Just the way he just says it, right? I mean, yeah, that's got to be up there too. So.
Yeah, and I think one of the quotes I actually use I swear to God, I use it all the time, and it's like, it's from Billy Crystal when he's like getting on the other mime, but you do the little bird, and he's like, mime, come on, mime is money.
Yeah.
I remember being knocked out by their exuberance, their raw power, and their punctuality.
Yeah, their punctuality.
Rand, favorite quote or scene?
Okay, can I do a scene and a quote?
Yeah, go for it.
My favorite scene, I swear to God, this is so funny. I can't stop thinking about how much I laugh when I see this, no matter how many times I see it. When Nigel says my guitar solos are my trademark, he's playing that, I guess he's playing that Les Paul, and he's just, or maybe it's a Flying V. He's playing the Gibson Flying V, and he's just going at it, and it's really not very good. And he's just whacking away with it. He's got his hand just, and he's just going as fast. And then he reaches down and he kicks this, or with his foot, he kicks the open strings of another guitar that's hooked through a different amplifier. And then he reaches down and grabs a violin and starts jumping up and down on the strings with the violin. He stops. He tunes the violin. He does it again. I swear to God, look at me. I'm going crazy. But when he turns that tuning knob on the violin, I lost it. I just thought that was so freaking funny. And then as far as the dialogue, oh man, this is tough because there's so many. Oh my God. I think when he says to Bobby Fleckman, you should have seen the cover they wanted to do. That wasn't a glove, let me tell you. I died laughing.
And Rand, you'll be able to testify to it, having just listened to the commentary by the band themselves. But it's not one particular quote, but it's an ongoing joke. That,
I didn't get all the way through it.
Well, Derek, every time a character pops up, Derek goes, "He's dead. She's dead.
Oh yeah, he's dead.
She's dead now. Yeah, he died shortly afterwards. She's dead. Yeah, genius, absolute genius.
Yeah, and they see Elvis Presley and go, "He's dead." Oh yeah, he's definitely dead.
Well, that's the other deleted scene, isn't it? Where they're at Graceland, and yeah, that's fantastic. Where he was going to do a special from here before he died. Yeah, a musical version of Somebody Up There Likes Me.
Yeah.
This really puts things in perspective. Yeah, there's too much fucking perspective.
The harmonies on Heartbreak Hotel.
Can I mention also, before I get off, the Jeff Beck connection with Nigel Tufnell is a whole lot of things. It's not really the guitar, because I never saw Jeff Beck with a Flying V or but the when they're in the airport and Janine's talking about astrology, Nigel's reading a magazine called Car and Driver. Now we all know Jeff Beck's into cars, right? And then there's other Jeff Beck things too, like when he throws his guitar down on the ground and he's all pissed off and walks away. You ever see the movie Blow Up?
Yes. Yeah.
That scene where he slams his foot through a piece of crap $10 guitar. They had to have gotten that from that, you know. He says everything about it, even in the commentary. He says, "That's a great leather jacket. What'd you do with that, Nigel?" He goes, "I gave it to Jeff Beck. He told me to fuck off." I mean, it's just there's so many little Jeff Beck things. Oh, and also when they're in the at the Vandermint Auditorium and he's all mad about the can't fold the bologna or the bread and it keeps breaking.
Yeah.
And he looks and he goes, "What's in here?" "Nobody." "And look, there's a little guy in here," or something like that. You know what that is?
To be folded.
That's from Van Halen, because they had those M&Ms and they said, if there's not only brown M&Ms in the bowl, we're walking. And I think that's where they got that, because that was a big thing. It was a big press release about that Van Halen quit a gig because the back, what do you call it? Those
the radar.
The catering was
the
wrong.
rider, and the rider,
Yeah, only brown M&Ms, no red or green or yellow.
I thought it was they wanted all the brown M&Ms taken out.
Yeah, they wanted the brown ones taken out.
Either way,
they wanted no brown
M&Ms.
And it was to make sure, because Jamie mentioned
read the
this last night on.
So this was like 2 years.
It was to make sure that, like, if you weren't paying attention to that, then they weren't reading the rider basically. So it wasn't that they wanted it done because they're, you know, just to make sure that everything was
specs.
I think that was around 1979 or 80. So when they made the movie, they definitely had that as a reference point, I think.
Yeah.
But the Jeff Beck, what do you call it? Connections are just everywhere in the movie. I mean, just constantly.
I just love some of the little stuff too as the movie goes on and they're on tour. Like the cold sores are multiplying.
Right,
on
they've
David
got
and Nigel's face.
Yeah. I love something that I think is funny now, and I don't even know why, is at the end when they're big in Japan. I think that's funny. My favorite one of my favorite scenes though is when the girlfriend's managing the band and they show up and the sign says Puppet Show and Spinal Tap.
Right.
Yeah.
And at least we've got a bigger dressing room than the puppets.
I think Jazz Odyssey is good. I wish I could hear more of that. Did they put that on their first record?
No.
No, I like.
And
Jazz
it's not a core or anything, but Marty DeBerge gets so many funny lines in this that I almost think he isn't the straight man of the film. I think Ian, the manager, is the straight man of the movie. Really,
he's good too. Yeah.
Oh, that's another thing I wanted to tell you guys.
He doesn't get jokes, whereas Marty DeBerge does do a lot of the actual humor. Like, you know, they've become notorious and adored as one of Britain's loudest bands. You know, like, so he's getting jokes, whereas Ian is there very much as the straight man, just to get the plot moving. You know, book gigs and things and kind of let them down. So he's more of the straight man of the picture, I'd say.
Have you ever heard the National Lampoon Radio Dinner and Lemmings?
I know all those words, but not in that order.
National Lampoon Radio Dinner is the first album, and Lemmings is another one. It's kind of a parody of Woodstock. Well, Tony Hendra, the guy that plays Ian Faith, is on that. So is Christopher Guest. It's just hilarious. They all came out of National Lampoon.
Oh, another life imitating art. There's a funny Johnny Ramone video on YouTube somewhere where he's literally doing the Nigel Tufnell thing where they ask him, can you say that we're the best or we're the best radio show in the States or something? And he's like, well, I can't say that. I don't know if you're the best rock show in the States or whatever. He literally does. It's like literally life imitating art when they're just trying to get him to say this phrase and he won't say it because he's like, I don't know if you're the best, you know. That's somewhere on YouTube, I think, which is really funny. But last thing to go out on.
One more quick thing. When they're at the airport, you hear an announcement about a flight or something where they're talking and stuff, and it's a English voice, not an English voice, it's an American voice. It's Michael McKean. I listened to it today. I go, oh my God, that's him doing the Lenny, not Lenny, but normal.
His regular,
his actual voice.
Okay. Interesting. Last thing to go out on. I just read actually like a few weeks ago they're making a sequel. Like
yes, yeah,
right.
God, I hope it's good.
Well, Break Like the Wind was an hour special on NBC, and I saw that they did a thing about they were trying to make up for the Stonehenge thing, so they built a bigger Stonehenge, and they couldn't get it into the theater. It was the door wasn't big enough.
It's a bit like Blackadder's also coming back. They're doing that as a comedy special. Nice. A lot of these, this is the age of bringing things back from the past, isn't it? But I don't know what can possibly be gained by, I just hope that they've got everything right for that, because you've got everything to lose in a sequel, an actual sequel to Spinal Tap, rather than the kind of quasi one that we did get, and not much to gain because you can't beat this. So
I think that, just to follow up what Davey said, I think that if they do this, or when they do this, this has got to be just as good as Spinal Tap is, because again, too much time has passed between these two movies, right? And so this has got to be, if not better, just as good, if not better than Spinal Tap. So hopefully they can do it, but if they do it.
I mean, essentially, all the films that we've already named, Mighty Wind and Best in Show and stuff like that, essentially are basically like they're kind of doing the same formula over again to success. Mm-hmm. So I can't imagine that that if they do get together and kind of have the same company and kind of the same kind of improvisational thing, that it might not be as at least there was a decent film. Maybe not.
There was a terrible one though, Marco, which they did For Your Consideration, which was like about the Oscars or the Golden Globes. That wasn't good. That was Christopher Guest. That was.
Maybe that's why I don't remember.
So that was bad. He had a series as well. It was also improv. I think it was called Family Tree, and that was bad. So Christopher Guest's last few projects actually have been quite bad. So
maybe that's why
I'm just saying that this much time has passed from 84 till now, that if they do this, like a sequel to this, they've got to come up with the goods for it to succeed, right? I mean,
I don't expect them to beat it, but if they give an admirable showing, I don't expect it to have another Spinal Tap. But
no. But
as long as it's good, has a few laughs, that'll be fine. Yeah.
Well, I think we've pretty much said all we're going to say. So why don't we wrap it up there? And thanks, Davey, for mentioning this. This is, if you're interested in watching a real documentary, this is a documentary that I worked on for 5 years. This took a lot of hard work, and this is available now on the Mystique website, which you can find the link in the description. And there's not a lot of these, so if you want one of them, once they're gone, they're gone. So if anybody's interested in that, sorry.
What is it about? I've been
the story of Mystique.
Yeah, it's about an indie progressive.
It's about 2 hours and 10 minutes.
There's a lot of footage. There's a lot of stuff in here. It's about an indie progressive metal band from the 80s that put out some stuff that's collectible now, and it's just a documentary about their music and their story and their start and their finish. And
okay,
great DVD. Thanks, Davy, for mentioning that. And thanks everybody for jumping on. This was actually a lot of fun and I enjoyed doing this. And yeah, like and subscribe. And like I said, each one of these folks, they show up on all kinds of stuff. Go follow their projects too. These folks, they know what they're talking about, you know, and they help make the Contrarians what we are. Like, we can't do it without them. So we appreciate all the support. They support us more ways than folks know, and I appreciate all of that, and love you guys, and we'll see y'all next time.
See you in trivia night.
And if you didn't like it, unsubscribe and downvote.
Yeah, if you don't like it.
Do not listen to Davy.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Pleasure, gentlemen.